This is The Extra Mile. Hey everyone, welcome to The Extra Mile. I am here, G5, with not Caleb Spear, but a new Caleb Stewart. Another S, which makes it really confusing in my contacts because it's both CS. And Justin Duncan, my good friend and also co-host, he wasn't able to make it today, so Caleb stepped in, and he's a part of our team, and he's awesome. So he knows Chuck, which is our main guest here, and he's with us doing a gospel meeting for us, and it's an honor to have you. It's an honor to have you. Introduce yourself. A little bit. Here, pull that mic up a little bit.
Okay.
There you go.
You bet.
Yeah,
Is that
there
better?
we go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm Chuck Durham from out this way, actually. I grew up in Hereford, Texas.
Yeah.
So went to Texas Tech back in the late 70s, graduated in 80. Went down to Houston, worked with D. Bowman and the Southside congregation. That was actually in those days, those were the beginning of preacher training.
Really?
Yeah, there were almost none in the country.
Oh, wow.
And so I'd had my sights set on it because D had been from here originally, and the year that I arrived at college is when he started with that congregation down there. So anyway, got the great opportunity to work with him for a 2-year training, and from there went to various places. Been in Texas and Kentucky and now Arkansas, and mostly my preaching's been in Texas. For Caleb Stewart and I knew each other the 13 years I taught down and preached down in College Station. So miss those guys, and it's always neat to run into them again in different places. Anyway.
Okay.
Love being out here. Glad to be back.
Now, do you have a favorite place? Like, do you have a favorite place when you were preaching? Because it sounds like you were all over the place.
Yeah. I mean, I would say College Station because of just working with the college students.
Yeah.
That was always a goal. My wife is an Aggie, and so she had always told me about how many Christians were down there in her day, and I always thought, man, that would be cool to work with that many, because
I bet.
At the time that Caleb was there, and then a few years before that, we had always over 100 and 120 sometimes. So it was a cool experience.
120. Wow.
Yeah.
How'd you feel about it?
A little overwhelmed at first.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I knew my sisters, but a lot of the people that went there all knew each other from Florida College camp at the Texas camp.
Yeah.
So when I got there, I was like, hey, I got my sisters. And then it was all these people, but I was excited about it. I mean, I'm an extreme extrovert, so it was good to get to know some people. But it took me some time to kind of get into it.
Okay.
Just because there were so many people there. It was a little overwhelming, but it was good.
Well, it helps because you're pretty extroverted. You're out there. You're so friendly and so nice. Are you that way, Chuck? Are you extroverted or are you introverted?
Probably more introverted, but I like being around people. I mean, it's more my battery gets charged. I have to get charged up and then go work with people.
Nice.
Back away and get charged up again. Some people, I think, like Caleb, are charged up by being around people.
Yeah, I think so.
I'm more the draining that takes out of me. It's not that I don't want to do it. I mean, I think I really like being around people, working with them, but my energy has to be charged up.
It has to be, you have to be revved up, ready to go.
Yeah.
Ready to go. Well, our main focus, having you here, I mean, we're talking to the younger people in their 20s, like myself. Caleb, you?
Yeah, we don't need to talk about ages on this podcast.
Yeah, I know the
Caleb's
answer to that
22,
one.
so
Someone mentioned at church the other day, they were like, from ages this to 27. I was like, well, Julie, you're on your own. Can't go anymore.
That's too good. Well, I guess like myself. We're just talking about how adulting is hard too. And
Right.
I think that really does resonate with a lot of people. I know, when I first moved out of my parents' house and I was coming to Lubbock, I mean, I had the queen-size mattress on my 98, GMC Yukon, listening to Bob Dylan, a Rolling Stone,
Hey, you were brought up good.
Yeah. And that's what I was. I was a Rolling Stone with a bank account for like one day and no money in my pocket, just trying to figure it out. And I didn't know all the little details, and it can be overwhelming too as you are trying to figure out the responsibilities that you have now.
Yeah.
well, the pressures that peers and friends and culture and family, all those things that that can be put on you. Adulting can be hard, but our main focus is, well, Jesus can help as well. And I'm going to start off with, how can he help?
The biggest question I think we all have is in figuring out what's most important in life is that God created us. And when we come to understand that, and that this was his son, and he came to save us from our sins, then our focus becomes being a disciple of Jesus. It doesn't matter what age you are. Mm-hmm. That business of making him the foremost and our concern. I think about this new The Chosen movie.
Show.
Yeah, and just really in a lot of ways fill in plausible gaps of what were people like, what were they living, and they so much like us. They didn't have life figured out, and they were struggling, and different things were going on. But Jesus made that all come together. Sometimes they say to each other, like they do on that program, I have no idea what I'm doing, but I know I'm following him.
Yeah, that's a good point to make. And I didn't realize the connection there, too, with the disciples. Many scholars believe that they were pretty much younger, real young, too. And, Jesus was there that helped them out.
Right.
And then being a disciple changes the way you think, changes the way you act, and how you interact with the world as well. That's really good.
And it makes you grow up. I mean, we all come, and I think we have immaturity. I mean, a friend of mine years ago said, he was at a college that catered to having, Florida college, to having Christians come. And he said, every year I got a year older, and they always were 18. And, he just said that is a reality that you have to get used to. And that helped me at A&M, because that was the truth there, too. Is that they always came in at 18 or so, and there was an immaturity. How else can they be? I mean, we just have to have great patience with everybody, because we were there once too. Somebody gave us a chance,
Right.
And God is the greatest help, the one that gives us the best chance.
And he's our Heavenly Father in a sense too, which makes it really helpful when trying to figure out life. Because that's what I see adulting as. I mean, maybe you see it differently, as really just trying to figure out life. Everyone's trying to figure it out.
That's right.
And some people have a little more wisdom than others, like I'm sure you have more wisdom than all of us here. And we're just trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
What encouragement could you give to someone who's just trying to figure it out?
Yeah, I would first of all, I think, and it's one of the points that we made last night's lesson, was that you've got to make the book be a central part of your life. Right. I mean, if you're not in it, and I don't mean just reading it, that we're meditating on it, that we're thinking through about Jesus, we're talking to other people, questions or comments or whatever, but we're growing in our faith, and it has to be that we spend time in his word to have that connection to him. And we can't expect that we're going to have that connection unless we proportionally spend the kind of time we need to do in the Word.
Right. And, I mean, Psalm 119 is big on this, where it says in verse 97, how I love your law, and it is my meditation, all day, he says. And then you go through that, and it's several verses about how we're meditating on it. But that's one of the ways that he communicates to us. I know that when I was trying to figure out, one of the big helps to me was making sure that we're connecting our prayer and our Bible study together too. Yep. I think sometimes we can preach those in two different things, and then separate those two different things in our life. Oh, we gotta mash them together as well. Do you have it all figured out, Caleb?
Oh yeah.
By the way, your coffee's right here.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I was starting to wonder if that was Chuckles or if it was mine.
Yeah, no.
Well, no. One of the things that I was thinking about was it actually. When we were talking about topics, we have a young people's Devo over at Family's House here, and we were talking about topics, and one of the things that I was thinking about was adulting is hard. Everybody's got a different phase of life of how it works, but for me personally, when I graduated high school and I came to college, I didn't have a choice on where I was going because Chuckles was the preacher there. And for those that don't know, I call him Chuckles, Papa Chuckles. That just was what we called him in college. But so obviously there was another congregation, but I was there. I had a family. I knew you. And then after college, like I had a job in Dallas and I got thrown into the weeds immediately, where I'm now completely by myself. I knew some people, there were good people in the area, but I think when it came to, you know, daily study and making sure, like you talked about, checking that box, you know, I had some of those things figured out where I was checking the box, but I wasn't really spending the time that I needed in meditation and really dwelling on the word and things like that. And it was a struggle. And that's one of the reasons why we were talking about doing a topic around this weekend, was because every phase of life is different for each person. But for me, that was the most difficult, because you're now in a new area with new people, and you don't really know where you're going to go. And it was a great problem, because if you reached out, you could hit a church almost anywhere in that area. And I think I visited maybe 7 or 8 different congregations in the span of 4 months. But for me, that was actually really difficult. Some people can visit once and that's their church, but it took me so long, and having that long period of time where I didn't have that established church family, because
that's real helpful.
I'm a people person. I love my people, but I had so many people. I was overwhelmed by it because I didn't know which one was going to be the right fit for me. So that was actually a really hard point in my life of just figuring things out. And that's where, you know, some of that adulting suffered for some of my study and prayer life and other things, because I was just trying to figure out life. And, you know, people can try to prepare you for it as much as you can, but sometimes when you just get thrown into it and you yourself haven't really mentally prepared for that part of it, then it can really be a struggle. So no, I have not figured everything out. I like to think that I've grown since that point, because it's been 7.5 years.
Oh, sure.
But, yeah.
Sure. The whole thing is growing. I mean, I mentioned Psalm 119, verse 97, but verse 9, the whole psalm begins with, well, how can a young man keep his way pure? And it's, well, by guarding it according to the word, which is what you were referencing as well there, Chuck, earlier, how important that is as a guide.
I think one of the things, too, and you made a comment about that, is sometimes we're looking, especially when you're a young person like that, and you're coming out of a more nurturing environment that obviously congregations that are built up around universities ought to be. They ought to be a place where somebody can light and be encouraged, and they know. And we always got those kind of compliments from parents, and we knew it from the kids themselves. But the reality is, when you go out in the world to grow up and become an adult, is this last lesson that I'll do is about the need to be tested. Because an adult has to branch beyond being in that comfort, you know, like these are my people. And I don't mean that in the same exact way that you were saying it, more the idea that sometimes a church that fits us is, again, this idea of, is it serving me? Versus if I really am launching out, you know, it may be that I need to go to a church that I am the person that's offering. Serving. Where not being so much the other way. And those are the situations I think you really grow in. It's when you have to get out and be in a place that it's not your comfort zone. You know, you're having to take leads that you never did have to take before, that's going to develop you.
When you have to really push.
Yeah. And I think, you know, you think about Jesus and his disciples. I mean, I believe that's exactly the idea. He was pushing all of those guys to be something way beyond what they would have been.
I just read The Hobbit, and it's one of my favorites. But you know, when Gandalf goes to Bilbo, he's a totally different Hobbit there than when he ends his journey. I don't know if you've read that. I know Caleb has. Oh yeah. He's totally different, right? He's gained courage. He's gone on an adventure. He's grown, and he's helped the whole time. What he's doing is he's helping these dwarves. Right. And I think. You know, I was just thinking about faith as I was reading that, and how you know, this life is really a testing journey where, you know, we are on this journey, and we should come out someone completely different than when God first called us. We should be someone completely different, helping other people, serving other people. Yeah.
And I think sometimes when you are a young adult, and sometimes your job takes you to a place. Like you had a great opportunity to be in a metroplex where there's a lot of congregations. And a lot of young people are going to go to those kinds of situations because it's where their jobs are. Yeah. It's where it is. But not always. You go to a place where I have one choice. You know, I have one place to go. And it's not the place you would have picked. It's not the place it would have been. But I imagine that somebody can really grow in that kind of environment because they are being tested in ways that they wouldn't have been tested, you know, otherwise.
Yeah. And These tests, man, they're pretty challenging. What were some of the tests for you that really pushed you?
Yeah, I think probably just having to work with different people. I mean, you're going to find as you are in your journey preaching, is that's the real call for us, is that we're associated with people, and it's going to be difficult at times. They're not. It's kind of like you see. Again, I go back to Chosen, watching people like thinking about Matthew being paired up with the zealot.
Oh, yeah.
And having somebody who would have hated and probably wanted to kill the other one in real life, and now in Christ having come together, and work those things out. And I probably, more than anything, is what was a challenge, still always will be a challenge, of working with all kinds of people, and not necessarily people you're always going to like.
Yeah. That's the challenge too.
Yeah.
Is you got to find a way to do that.
As you love his brothers.
I think that's one of the ways, right, that Jesus can help us with adulting. It should be a unifier there.
I think of all the one another passages. That's what we're going to do tonight at the Wise, is look at bearing one another's burdens, and understanding how many of those one another passages are in the Scriptures, and they all have to do with you have to have a relationship. They have no meaning outside of that.
Right.
And they're all about directing our attention to the other person.
Which one are you going to?
Pardon?
Which one are you going to? Romans 12?
The one in Galatians.
One in Galatians?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What does that look like if we turn over there?
Yeah. Man, when I'm turning, it sounds like I'm echoing. Okay, well, I'm not. You were kind enough to lend me a Bible, but you know how you get used to your Bible.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So do you want me to read the passage?
Yeah,
okay.
Go ahead.
All right, Galatians 6, beginning at verse 1, he said, "Brothers, if anyone is caught in any transgression, you who are spiritual should restore him in a spirit of gentleness. Keep watch on yourself, lest you too be tempted. Bear one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ. For if anyone thinks he is something when he is nothing, he deceives himself. But let each of you test his own work, and then his reason to boast will be in himself alone, and not in his neighbor. For each will have to bear his own load." So we're gonna look at that tonight, in detail. But the main idea at verse 2, of course, is bear one of those burdens. I think his example is that first one where he says, "If anyone's caught in a transgression, you that are spiritual, restore that person."
Yeah, you're there to help them.
Yeah,
help them out.
And when you think about it, children are always taking. They do serve to a degree, but they're being taught all the time to serve.
They are.
others.
They are. Yeah.
And a huge part of passing into adulthood is finally realizing I must be the one who serves others, and that's definitely what has to happen.
We're doing like a little Devo sorry about. Bless you. We're doing a little Devo here in Proverbs and in Instagram, just like really short blurbs and things like that. And the other day, Proverbs 3:27 really stuck out to me. Do not withhold good from those who need it when you have the ability to help. I don't know, that one just really struck me because especially if we're comfortable, we have the ability to sit back and enjoy the good that we have for ourselves. Really, not bear one another's burdens. But this is telling us, no, you actually have the responsibility to help and to be aware, too, of other people and their needs. And being aware means that we have to be interconnected with them. We have to actually connect with them and know them. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to fulfill that responsibility. And it says, if you have the power to help, well, part of that power is knowing them, too. I think we can forget that as well. Were you going to say something else?
Yeah, and I think some of my favorite people that I've ever met in life are the people that when they come to you, they always ask. They're asking everything to do with you and what's going on in your life. And if I think about it for myself, like in the span of a conversation, how many times do you say the word I? And I've even heard lessons about that too. And if you're always so focused on yourself, you're never going to be able to bear those burdens because you won't know about those other people. And I think that for myself, I try to do that. It's it's overwhelming. So like we talked about that in the beginning of like adulting is hard. One of the things that I think it goes on either side of the spectrum is either one, you can be so afraid of what the person will share and not know how to necessarily handle it. Or two, you can be on the opposite side where you want to know everything about that person, but then you also want to know about everyone. So you can't necessarily build a close relationship with every single person that you meet. Right. It's about dedicating your time to the people that matter, that you see where there could potentially be a need, and really trying to dig into their lives without being intrusive and saying, you know, how
Right.
can I help you?
Right. And that closeness is so important, I think, in friendship. I mean, we have to have friends as well. Oh, man. That's really good. Go ahead.
Well, I would think like, you know, Paul and Barnabas worked better.
Yeah, he was an encourager.
You can't, you're not, again, to that point, you're not going to work that way with every last person. And people have to, again, that's adulting too. That's realizing that it's okay.
Yeah.
You're not, and in a congregation that gets larger and larger, there's no way you can be close to just absolutely everybody. We talk about small groups. We talk about having, you know, close friends. I mean, I know there's a bad side of that. We talk about cliques developing, and you never try to focus. But there's a reality. You can't be close to everyone. And you're going to have people like Barnabas to Paul, or Silas later, you know, you see that. Or Barnabas taking Mark under his wing. And so you see those kind of, Peter apparently too with Mark. You see those kind of relationships. And we need that, and recognize that we do.
Yeah, absolutely. But even Paul and Barnabas, man, they bumped heads too.
That's right.
As well. And it seems like later on, you know, that everything went fine.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, that happens, right?
Right.
How do we work through those conflicts too? I think another part of adulting, probably the biggest one for me, is trying to work through some conflicts. I'm not a confrontational person. I don't like conflict. I want to just stay away. I just want peace, and I don't want to do that. I don't want to talk to people that way. But I mean, it has to. You have to do that. What's some wisdom you can share there?
Yeah. Again, it's going to be that you know that God wants us to be in unity. He wants us to be one as is with He and His Father. So we have to work on it. You have to. Sometimes you're not wanting to even maybe talk to this person, but that's the time you need to talk to them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, I'm having a tickle in my throat.
No, that's okay. It's okay.
It's that Lubbock
Getting
air.
over-
Yeah, it is a little bit air. It's dust
Getting over
everywhere.
bronchitis too.
Yeah.
And I forgot to bring a cough drop. Does somebody have one?
I don't. Oh, I have a. I can go get you mint. You want mint?
Yeah, something that just helps.
So you mint? Okay, I'll take over.
Oh, great. I'm not even supposed to be in front of the camera. I'm supposed to be behind the camera.
Oh, he was talking about, you know, how you get along with people, and so what's happened in your life, maybe that things that you had to do to get along with somebody you necessarily didn't really jive with as a brother.
Check myself. I think there's a lot that goes into humbling yourself to know that either you may not necessarily know everything or be the most right, and I don't know. I think even in marriage,
Yes.
I recently got married. If y'all didn't know, and it is the most beautiful and wonderful thing. But you live with another person now, and so you're not always right. I'm never right. But, no, I'm just kidding. But I think really when it comes to conflict in life and marriage and friendships, for me personally, it was just really turning off my own opinions and turning off the things that I think and trying to put myself in the perspective of the other person's shoes and saying, what's the real reason why this person is frustrated or angry with me or with the situation that's going on. And I got to tell you, probably the biggest place that I work through with that is at work. And I'm still not great about it. But it's difficult to know, especially when you're working with people in the world, you know, how someone else's brain is working, and they may think one way and you're thinking the other way, and it's just butting heads back and forth. But once you seek to understand where they're coming from, their perspective, then it helps try to put yourself in their shoes and then come to a resolution that makes the most sense. I don't know if that makes sense.
That's been
at all,
the hardest thing
yeah,
that I've had to learn in life is listening, listening to the other party, and taking the time to not think about formulating my response to their. If we're in an argument, discussion, whatever, is you're always thinking about how to respond to it.
Boom. Yeah.
Rather than just taking the time to listen. And they used to talk about the Native Americans would come to the council table with the Army, whoever they were, talking with, and they would, have their what's on the table, what's on the discussion. They'd go away. They just leave, and the guy said, "What are they, doing?" And he just said, "It's not you trying to be culturally insensitive, but they said that's Indian time."
Yeah.
He said, "What do you mean by that?" And they said they're going to go away and think about it.
Yeah.
Before they come back and give you a response. And I thought, good grief, we need to all learn that.
Yeah. So when I lived up in upstate New York, the Iroquois were there. That's like where the Iroquois are, and that's exactly right. They had this confederacy, and when they would meet together, they would have these meetings, and they would talk about things, and they'd all have this this stick that they would pass around. That person has to talk, and the other people have to listen. But they wouldn't make a decision at that first meeting. They would leave, like you're saying, and then they would come back. Make sure, hey, all the tension is gone. Yeah. All your impulses, negative impulses, are just gone, and now we can come back together, and we can focus on making a more intelligent decision.
And to me, that just makes me think, going back to prayer for everything. Why try to make the decision immediately when you could go to God and pour out your heart to Him and pray about it to be able to help make you make the right decision?
Really good point. Really good point.
We'll be able to step back a little bit in prayer and focus. Hey, this is it. Just look at this passage here in Galatians, right? Verse 3. Is this not someone who would have a problem with conflict? For if anyone thinks he is something, when he is nothing, he deceives himself, right? And then it goes on to say, let each one examine his own works. That time of praying, I can examine what I'm doing here and put myself aside. Right. I think that really helps.
And that makes me think of the word I was trying to think of earlier, pride.
Yeah.
There's a lot of pride when it comes to conflict, whenever you're not looking at the other person.
You want to win.
Yeah. Exactly.
But it's that key phrase that you said, if anybody thinks he's something.
Yeah.
I mean, we're all nothings before Him, in the sense that we sinned against Him. We deserve to be punished and sent away in hell for eternity. And yet, no, He does not want that. And He loves us with a love we can't imagine, the grace He wants to bestow in His Son, and He does everything He can to rescue us.
Amen.
But if we really understand that, then we know how much of a nothing we are. I mean, not that we're not worth to Him. I don't mean that, but I'm just saying what we've done has made us be, the big fat zero that now He can rebuild if we'll give it to Him, and being humble.
Right, and
we have to admit that.
We do, yeah. We do have to admit it, and I think that's another way that Jesus helps us.
Yes,
with adulting, right? It does help.
But you think a child,
yeah,
everything's about them. From the moment they cry, it says my diaper needs to be changed. I'm hungry, feed me. Come hold me. It's all about them. And with children in the faith, it can be exactly the same thing. Because they're coming out of the world, they've all been used to the way they've been thinking, and it's not about, thinking that they're nothing and that they need to be serving other people and they need to be just like their master, and that's how we go to adulthood in Him.
Right. Now that should also help us to come to a point of forgiveness too, right? I mean, do we just if we're in a conflict with especially another brother and sister in Christ, right? Because doesn't verse 10 here tell us so that whenever you have an opportunity, let us do good to all people, especially to those who belong to the family of faith. I mean, if we have a brother in Christ that we're having a hard time with, do we just cut him off?
Right.
Do we just say, I can't connect with you anymore?
Right.
Because you're causing a problem for me.
I always say it this way. I think, you get to heaven and you look around and say, how did those people make it up here? Yeah. Are you going to avoid them in heaven for an eternity? Mm-hmm. I mean, it's a telling thing. If we're avoiding them here and we're not trying to solve it here, then why do we think God will let us be there?
Right.
He wants us to solve our problems. Maybe we'll never be best buddies, and that's not what He's asking us to be. But he's asking us to have a deep love, a deep respect for he redeemed these people. If he redeemed them, then who am I to stand there and act like, I'm going to have an issue with them?
Right. Yeah. I mean, we should all stand as redeemed people and act like that. Yeah.
So forgiveness is a huge, and we understand that. I think that's why God created families and created, it's me just thinking of those were first, marriage first before he created any other relationship horizontally, and then children. And you think about how much we learn out of those situations that are parallel to what we need to do in the family of God.
Yeah. Well, so let's step back a little bit as we kind of close and ask you, Chuck. How did you come to faith? How did you find Jesus?
Well, like a lot of us, I grew up with grandparents that were very, very strong in the faith. They were first-generation Christians, as we talk about. They came to the faith back in the Great Depression.
Oh, well.
And were nothing. Didn't I don't even know what they thought about God before they became Christians. They lost a son in a farming accident when he was 9 years old. And I've always thought that must have had a profound impact on their life. It didn't drive them away from God. They didn't blame God.
That's good.
And they didn't blame each other that somebody could, because it was an accident, could have, in my grandfather's case, could have prevented it had he taken more precautions. But whatever, I don't know what they had to work through. I saw them later, and they had worked through whatever in great love for each other and for God. Just rocks, So, and that drives you. You have to have somebody most of the time. Somebody brings us, to the Lord. I realize there are some people that open the Bible the first time and discover Him, and and they're hunting and searching, and we've met them. But most of us come because somebody else in our background.
Yeah, that's that relationship.
Yep.
We need that relationship.
Yeah, so that's what played the role in my in my life. And then all the imperfections as you go along life's way, and how immature you can look back on yourself, and think, but by the grace of God, and by His mercy, you just keep getting up and trying and going on, and you learn, and other people help you, and some of that's hard. Some of it is that they kicked you in the seat of the pants, and they had to chastise you, and they had to do the hard stuff that we have to do to bring people to adulthood.
Yeah.
And it goes on.
You're absolutely right. I'm looking for this passage here. I wrote an article in the bulletin, but I think sometimes we can see that, right? We can see adulting as a negative thing as well, and there are negative aspects to just growing up, for sure. But God He also reminds us that we should enjoy our life, and we should enjoy our youth as well. And Ecclesiastes 11 verse 9 tells us to rejoice, young man, while you are young, and let your heart cheer you in the days of your youth. Follow the impulses of your heart and the desires of your eyes. And I make that point in the article, that's not talking about a hedonistic impulse or desire. That's talking about having impulses and desires after God, being impulsive with God's love, making, really having an instinct to serve others, and making that point, because he goes on to say, but know that God will judge your motives and your actions, right? We got to reflect, examine ourselves. What's our motives? What's our actions? But again, he's reminding us, I do want you to enjoy that.
Right.
Because it's a time of zeal, and a time of, just you're passionate about things, and you're learning, and it's a good reminder.
Yeah,
positive.
It is.
Yeah.
Balance.
Yeah.
It's balance in life.
Yeah.
And it's understanding that He did make us to live here. We're going somewhere else, and it's more important that we focus on that eternal journey. But He made us to live here too, and so that's what the book of Ecclesiastes, I think, is out. Because a lot of other passages talks about enjoy the work of your hands.
Yeah.
And the things that you do. So that's definitely true as a young person, because you're going to reach a stage in life where those joys aren't going to be there, and that's what he talks about as the old person.
Yeah, that's right.
In that passage. So
that's right.
It's balance. Remember that. Enjoy the things. Jesus went to a wedding feast.
Yeah.
Remember that.
Yeah.
Remember those things.
That's right. Feast of Dedication, Hanukkah, and
Yeah.
all those things.
Yeah.
No, he really enjoyed. I mean, you just see John, as they're sitting around the table too. I mean, resting on Jesus. I mean, they had a closeness there, a bond, and they were really went through some tough times. Right, Jesus was persecuted, verbally and physically, but they did enjoy each other, and did enjoy life too. Balance. That's a good way of putting it. Well, is there one thing as we close up? Caleb, did you want to say anything else?
I'm good.
You're good. Okay.
Well, I mean, I could ask one question too if we have time for a question.
Go for it.
I think for people listening, especially if like you're younger or moving into any age, we've talked a little bit about it before, but you go through different phases of life, and that can be having those milestones of going to high school or college or getting married or buying a home or all the things. For phases of life, what would be the best piece of advice that you could give to just keep yourself rock solid?
Oh, you think of so many things. I guess the general answer is just don't ever let go of Jesus. Don't let that always be the focus. Even if you're buying, like in your case, y'all building a house, you remember, why am I doing this? It's part of your immediate family and your needs that you have, but will I use it for Jesus? Will we use it for hospitality? Will we use it to have Bible studies? Will we make it part of our journey with Him? And so at every phase of life, if our focus is on Jesus, we're going to be asking, what would He want me to do? Not only with the possessions that I have, but with my talents, with my time, with our marriage, with our family. What are we supposed to do? My work. Sure. And it's all about remembering about Him.
Absolutely.
Keeping that focus.
Mm-hmm.
That's really good, man. That's kind of what I was summing up. I was going to ask basically something similar, like what's the big thing that you've learned growing up, and this wisdom and holding on to Jesus? Would that be your answer as well?
Yeah. And especially you're going to go through some tough stuff. You can't foresee. I was talking last night about my son, and nobody wants to go through that. Nobody wants to have that happen. But I know, both of you guys here sitting at the table, I don't know about I know more about Caleb and his personal life, but George, you don't know about somebody's background, but I can guarantee you somewhere, sometime in your life, you're going to face really, really difficult challenge. And those are the ones that are going to test you. Mm. That's where all that you've been trying to build before is really going to come. Adversity, as one guy said, introduces you to yourself, and you're going to really find out who you are in that point. And you're not going to like it the first time, probably the second and third too. There's going to be stuff you're going to see about yourself that you're thinking, this is not what I thought I was. Yeah. And that's such a learning and growing moment to move forward in adulthood. If we focus on Jesus, if we come out of it, we're going to make some bad mistakes probably in the middle of all of it, but we'll learn if you are focused on Him, listening to His Word.
That's awesome. I will say, just having kids too will make you realize much you don't like yourself.
Yeah.
Or how much you have to improve.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Or when you see yourself come out in them.
Yeah, I know. That's really hard.
And you're going, I know where that came from.
Yeah, some of your worst qualities.
Yes.
You're like, how now I need to stop that.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly right. It's really great though. Yeah. At the same time, you got to have that, be able to. Jesus, he saw what was to come, and he saw the good. And so I think you also have to remember, you have to have that hope. And
That's
you have
right.
to see the positive too. It's going to help you get through there, and help you change too.
And you think of how great His love is for us. And in spite of all the weaknesses and just how we must disappoint Him at times, He has this great hope for what we can be and where we can end up.
That's right. That's right. I love. I was just looking through some of these verses here, But this is talking about Jesus. He's talking to the people here, and it's spoken. He's quoting Isaiah in Matthew chapter 12, where it says, "Here is my servant whom I have chosen, the one I love, in whom I take great delight. I will put my spirit in him, and he will proclaim justice to the nations. He will not quarrel or cry out. He will, nor will anyone hear his voice in the streets. He will not break a bruised reed or extinguish the smoldering wick until he brings justice to victory." And the verse 21 really sums it up nice. "And in his name the Gentiles will hope." There's the idea of hope too. So it starts off, here's the Jesus that you should focus on, right? This is the one that God delights in. This is his son. It's not gonna, he's gonna bring justice and hope to the world, and that's something that we can then look forward to as well. So it shows those parallels. Well, Chuck, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I appreciate it. You should come on more often too, whenever you're in you're in town. Yeah,
I'll be glad to.
Anyway, if you're listening, make sure to do all this stuff. If you're watching on YouTube, like, subscribe. We appreciate you guys for listening. And like always, just remember to go sow. Thank you.